Renegade University is proud to announce a brand new webinar starting Wednesday, September 22nd. It's an 8-part live webinar, and I think it might be the most important course that we have ever offered. We've been talking a lot, basically nonstop, about death for almost 2 years now, and yet very few of us are really prepared for our own end of life. That's why an instructional design for dying, taught by Tom Nickel, a longtime volunteer at the Zen Hospice Center in San Francisco, will change the way you think about your death, and most importantly, to prepare you for the end of life. So go to renegadeuniversity.com/courses for more information and to enroll in an instructional design for dying. Also, coming up next month, October 8th to the 10th, it's the biggest event of the year. It's the Renegade University Weekend in Texas, featuring Scott Horton, Cody Wilson, Hotep Jesus, Jack the Perfume Nationalist, and Deirdre McCluskey, with me and Buck Johnson and Paloma Verde CBD, who is the sponsor of the event, in Lockhart, which is the barbecue capital of the Longhorn State. We are going to have a blast all weekend long. We now have a few remaining general admission tickets, which gives you everything. You get access to all the special guests. You're going to be in all the interviews for Unregistered. You can participate and be in the podcast. So go to renegadeuniversity.com/Texas for more information and to sign up for the biggest event of the year, RU Texas, October 8th to the 10th. I can't wait to see you in class or in Texas. Thanks. This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. My guest this week was born in West Africa to a communist father, and he has come a very long way. This is my interview with Germinal Van. I am joined from Oak Park, Illinois, near Chicago, by Germinal G. Van, who is an independent economist. Is that a fair title for you?
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm not affiliated with anyone. I mean, I do my work and I publish it. I'm not aspiring to do perfect work because at the end of the day, I know that it will never be unanimous, so it can be perfect. But at least the point is to share my work and then let people reflect on it. And that if they can bring more ideas to expand on what I already did, then we make everything progress. That's what science is about.
Yeah, and you've written many articles and published 20 books already.
Yeah.
At a very old age of, are you what now, 32?
31.
31?
Yeah, 31.
Guess how many books I'd written at the age of 31, Germinal? Yes.
Let me be nice and say 2.
0, okay? So stop making me feel bad, first of all. But, your story is quite remarkable. So as people might be guessing right now, you weren't born in the United States.
No, I wasn't.
You were born very far away in a country called the Ivory Coast.
Yep.
Côte d'Ivoire in French, and in my bad French. And I really want to, and let's first establish sort of your politics and the point, the sort of arguments in your book, so people know what we're talking about here. But you're a free market, classical liberal kind of guy, right? And
yep.
Not a fan of government, state intervention, right? And
yep.
Your books more or less stick to that point of view. applying those arguments to various major issues these days. So now that's a very strange thing, even in the United States, but it's especially strange in West Africa, right? That those ideas, as I've heard you say this actually, that in West Africa, your ideas are exotic.
Very exotic, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to, okay, so this is great. So now let's get into your life, your history, Ivory Coast. I'm very excited about this. I have not been able to talk to anybody about these issues on this show, and I've been wanting to talk about West Africa for a long time. It's a place I'm very interested in. I want to visit there, by the way. But so you were born 31 years ago into a family that was fairly prominent, I think, because of who your father was and what he was doing. You want to talk about just who your parents are and were?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So my dad was a lawyer when I was born. He already has his own law firm.
Mm-hmm.
He built a name for himself. He was defending politicians, and he was also into criminal and fiscal law. And in 1995, he went to Rwanda for the Rwanda genocide. So he was a prosecutor at the UN for the Rwanda genocide. My mom has a law degree, and she worked for the Ivorian Parliament since 1996. And yeah, so both of my parents are into politics and law. So I was destined initially to get into law and politics. In fact, I studied political science. But my sister is the one that was more scientific. She was more into mathematics and physics and biology. My dad always wanted her to be a medical doctor. And so, yeah, I had a pretty normal childhood. My parents divorced when I was 15, but that happens to pretty much every family, either the parents are together or they're not. Yep. So, yeah, I won't say that it is a special case for me, but it happens to everyone. And so I lived in Kenya for 4 years. That's why I learned English for the very first time, from 2001 to 2005. And that's when I was living with my sister in a boarding school, in a German boarding school, and I was going to the French school there. Very interesting. And so I learned a little bit of German, and I was really into soccer back then. I even wanted to be a professional soccer player. My mom said, hell, I don't want my son to be on TV and see his leg getting broken by other players. And what you're going to do after 30 years old? Because, in sports and soccer in general, by 30 years old, you're considered 65. So it's time for you to retire. So my mom wasn't sure about it. So I just went to high school, and in the high school system back in Ivory Coast, we have majors. So I majored in math, physics, and biology. But back then, I did not appreciate science. I didn't like it. I was more into the classical studies of philosophy, literature, history. And then I went all the way to 12th grade. We have that exam called the baccalaureate exam. And I failed. I failed miserably. So when I failed, I switched to the classical studies, and then I excelled there. And plus, at the time, I was so focused on becoming president of my country. That was when I was, age 18. I wanted to be president. Oh, yeah. I've been a very ambitious guy. I mean,
definitely.
You get that right now.
Very ambitious.
Yeah, I was like, I want to be president. And that's even the reason why I came to the US to study political science. So my goal was come in the US, get my education, and go back.
Oh, wow.
And then I came to the US in 2010, studied political science at the Catholic University of America. I graduated in 3 years. I was taking summer classes every year. And the reason why was because tuition was increasing. So I was okay, I need to complete all of these classes and get out.
Right.
And then I took a year off. I was working odd jobs like as a server, as a line cook, stuff like that, just to learn, so just to even get experience. And then I got into George Washington University to do a master's in politics. So the program I did, it's called the Graduate School of Political Management. It's a program that is focused on applied politics. So it's for people that work in politics as professionals. So let's say you work for senator or you work for a political consulting firm. So this program for that type of people. But to me, I did it not because I even like the program. I started to appreciate life in the US, and I was looking for a way to stay. And one thing for international students is to keep going to school. So, and that's when my shift started to happen, my intellectual shift.
Okay.
Because, so as I said earlier, my goal was to get my education and go back home, run for office, and etc. But I realized that in Africa, at least in most African countries, I don't want to generalize the whole continent and say all 1 billion Africans are the same way. That's not true. But in most African countries, specifically in the French-speaking countries, people don't really care about ideologies. And I am someone in politics, I really care because I understand how ideologies work. But when I saw that back home politics was not based on ideology, but based on clientelism, basically we follow you because you give us money. I knew that it wouldn't work. And on top of that, I've always been a very individualistic person. And that's one of the reasons why I chose the US to come and study. I always loved the United States since age 10. Why? I don't know. That was back then, but now I do know. I always liked Anglo-Saxon culture. Because, yeah, I always did. And the reason why is because I strongly believe in pragmatism and empiricism, things that are tangible. And Anglo-Saxon people tend to think that way. Whereas French, Portuguese, Spanish, Italians are more like romantic, they're more idealistic. I don't like that. I like things that are concrete. What is it? Is it practical? What can we do about it? So that has always been my approach. So I started to realize that, okay, maybe I can do politics in the US because my personality was more fit for the US culture than Ivorian culture. So I already understood that shift. So after grad school, I wanted to go to law school because, you know, the conventional path in the US is you go to law school, you get your law degree, then you become a politician. That has always been the conventional path. So I took the LSAT 3 times, didn't do well. There was also the language barrier that was there, but I won't blame it on the language barrier too. It's just like I was kind of, I was never a really good test taker. Even if I know the answer, I start like doubting myself. And the minute you start doubting yourself, it's done. So I took the LSAT 3 times, but I still managed to get into 2 law schools. But at the time, I didn't have the money to go and I didn't feel like taking loans. So I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book. And that's when I wrote, and I was working at Apple. And that's when I wrote my first book. And I was really proud of it. Like, it was perhaps the proudest moment of my life after, of course, marrying my wife. It was like, you know, it really felt good having your own book in your hand and be like, Jesus, I'm the one who did this.
Yeah.
And then once you do it, once the first book is out, then it becomes routine. It's just that very first book that is the hardest. Yeah.
I wish it became routine after your first book. I haven't even finished my 3rd book, and I'm a lot older than you are. A lot older than you are. I wish it was routine. No, it's taken me many, many years in between each book. So I think it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious that you describe yourself as a very practical person, because your first ambition was to become an international soccer star. And then it was to become the president of the Ivory Coast. and now you've written 20 books. So Germinal, I don't actually think you're very practical at all.
Right. I'm all over the place.
But if you were practical, you would be uninteresting and you would not be on this show right now.
Right.
So I want you to know yourself a little bit better. You need to embrace the fact that you're not actually a very practical person. You're a visionary, right? And you're highly ambitious, and you see things. You have a very large view of the world that most normal people don't have. And that's exactly why you're interesting. So I want to go back though to your father. am I right that he was a socialist or is a socialist?
Oh yeah, he was a communist. I mean, he's
Communist.
been a communist. Yeah. He's been a communist. Yeah. He
Wow.
strongly believe in left-wing politics. I even made a post where I explained where my name Germinal is from.
Yeah.
It's from that book, Emile Zola. And my dad read the book. He loved it. And he loved the name of the book. So he said, one day if I have a son, I will call him Germinal. And but I disappointed him. Sorry, man. I love private property. I love capitalism. I believe in limited government. My bad. But I don't feel bad at all. And my dad, we used to always argue about like political philosophy, and he would respect me because I would make my arguments very logical, very rational, and it was like wow. And at that time, I did not even know about like central planning or
Mhm.
all the Misesian arguments. I didn't even know about that then. That was like 2010, 2011.
Hmm.
I was a strong Republican. I always supported the Republican Party in the US, like, you know, lower taxes, small government, let people live, let them, you know, mind their business, no government intervention, stuff like that. I always believe in those things. But I think the reason why is because since I did not grow up with my dad, but with my mom, and my mom has always had a conservative
Oh, okay.
perspective. If I lived with my dad, surely I would have had a different perspective.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. So let's talk about Ivory Coast politics for a second here. So you were born, am I right, at the very end of the rule of President Bois?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. He died in 1993, but I was born in 1990. He was old. He was dying.
Right. And Bois was a very important guy in world politics, not just in the Ivory Coast, one of the longest serving heads of state, I think, when he was there. 33 years he was president since.
Absolutely.
He was the.
You're right. You did your research.
And he was the founding. Well, actually, I mean, I was involved in foreign politics back in the 1980s and 90s when he was sort of a name,
Oh, wow.
you know. So that's, I mean, I don't know a lot, but I know the basics. So 33 years, he was the founding president of the country after independence in 1960, right?
1960, yeah, you're right.
And very controversial. And to this day, he is considered by, I guess, if there is mainstream opinion about the Ivory Coast, it is that he was sort of a puppet of the West, in particular the United States, in fighting communists, especially in Africa. And I don't know if this is true, but he's been accused of participating in various coup attempts against communist leaders in other African countries, supporting anti-communist guerrillas and militias in various countries. You know, pretty harsh, violent stuff. As a very enthusiastic member of the Cold War, participant in the Cold War, and so I think I've heard you say some nice things about Bois.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming
what I say.
What'd you say?
I was saying I'm going to reiterate what I said.
Okay. Well, I'm going to challenge you. See how this goes.
Sure.
But your father must have hated his guts.
Oh, absolutely. He hated the man, but he enjoyed the fact that Bois implemented policy for it. So an education policy for people who had good grades, they could go study in France with a scholarship. My dad took advantage of that. He didn't complain, right? But yet he's the one saying Bois is this and that.
Yeah, okay. So tell me,
socialist.
Yeah. So tell me why you like this guy Bois.
Sure. So Bois was a realist. That's what people don't understand about him. He was a good Ivorian, but a bad African. And I agree that he was a bad African, and he should be a bad African because Africa is too big. We don't have the same purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to tell me that all white folks have the same purposes in life? Are you going to tell me that the purpose of the British man is the same as the purpose of the French? The purpose of the French is the purpose of the Russian man, but they're all white.
Just before you go on, explain what bad African means within the context of African politics. What does that mean?
Bad African means he was not for Pan-Africanism. It was not for a global Pan-African government, because people like Kwame Nkrumah wanted a unitary central government for the whole continent, and Bois was not for that. He understood that we have different cultures, we have different languages, we have different cultural values, and we cannot all be put in the same basket. And the reason why I say was a realist is because in 1960, we live at a time where the industrialization of the world was accelerating. We had to catch up. In 1960, if you look at the tools that people were using for agricultural activities, is the tools that people were using in the 19th century. So Boigny understood that we have to embrace industrialization. And to industrialize a society, you need to focus on private property. You need to let people having businesses. You need the government to implement economic freedom policies so that people can increase economic productivity. He understood that. And it is the same that Kagame is doing in Rwanda right now. There is no political freedom, but there is economic freedom. And from 1960 to 1980, there was the period that we call the Ivorian miracle. Ivory Coast was performing economically way better than its surrounding neighbors. You had Ghana with Kwame Nkrumah. They had like state-owned enterprises, which completely reduced economic productivity and wages. The same for Burkina Faso, Mali, everyone around. And all of them were coming to Ivory Coast. And one thing Houphouët-Boigny understood was immigration. He had the same immigration vision as the US. Immigration was an economic tool for him. The more people you let in, they bring in the talent, human capital. They're bringing the human capital with them, and they're increasing the living standard of the country through the participation in the economy. They're increasing economic productivity. They're creating new industries that maybe the local Ivorians were not involved into. And it was that very mistake that Amin Dada did in the 70s when he kicked out all the Gujaratis, the Pakistanis, the Lebanese, and then he handed their business to the local Ugandans. Sure, as Thomas Sowell said, you may confiscate material wealth, but you cannot confiscate human capital.
Right.
So what happened? Those guys fled to England and to other European countries, and they reproduced what they created in Uganda. And those local Ugandans, they couldn't do what the Lebanese, the Pakistanis, and the Indians were doing. So Houphouët-Boigny understood that. And that's why Ivory Coast has been the most prosperous country in French West Africa. There is no country can truly rival with us. I'm not saying to be a nationalist, but I'm proud. That's why I love the guy. He wasn't perfect. Of course, he was a politician. You can't expect a politician to be an angel. But he understood that his goal was to make Ivory Coast the first power in West Africa, in French-speaking West African countries. And he did. He did it. And yeah, everyone envied Ivorians. People like from Benin, from Togo, they were coming to Ivory Coast to study. Like they would do what I did, like they would come to Ivory Coast, they get their degrees, and they go back. The same way I came in the US, try to get my degree. Things have changed. But the point is that Houphouët-Boigny created the conditions for people to flourish economically at the very least. Now, politically, every African country had a one-party system. It was the Cold War. You had to choose between the Russians, so the Soviets, and the Americans. Africans were not politically mature for democracy. Democracy is something that takes a long time. And on top of that, it's not even, to me, it's not necessarily a good system. But it is so far like the best we have. But for African politics, it's not. Like Africans are very individualistic. And let me explain what I mean here. So African culture, we tend to talk about collectivists that we love to share and everything. we may be culturally collectivist, but we're spiritually individualistic, because the collectivism we talk about, in fact, is for our own personal gains. It's not for the gain of the community. Yeah. And this is one thing I noticed compared to white folks who may be individualistic culturally, like like in England or in the US, but spiritually they're collectivists. Let me give you an example. When you see, for instance, someone, you walk in a white neighborhood and you see someone getting jumped, one of the first things you're going to do is to try to call the police. You say, "Let me help you." That is your collectivist instinct coming. You try to help your fellow man. But in black neighborhood and Africa, you see someone getting jumped, you just keep walking. You're like, "Hey, I don't want." You say, you think about yourself here. You're being individualistic. And I can give you another example, which is, for instance, there's another example where, we have that stereotype of that Africans make a lot of kids. They have a lot of kids. And one of the reasons why is because it's like doing probability theory. By having a lot of kids, you know that one of them will emerge, like intellectually, who will either be good intellectually, or he will be someone that, tried in life. So you will gather all the resources, all the money, and send your kid to Europe or to Canada or the US for him to become the face of the family. And whenever that kid is working there, now his family that is back home is going to call him, "Hey, bring us money, bring money home. Your brothers and your sisters are here." And this is a mentality that is extremely selfish, because when the parents do that, they never they never ask how you doing. They never ask how much taxes you paying, how is life there, etc. To them, you're their ATM. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. We are spiritually very individualistic. We pretend to be collectivists, like, oh, we share, we live together, but we do things for our own personal gains.
Okay. That's fascinating. I have many things to say about that. So Africans, again, we're generalizing, and I know you don't want to generalize, but whatever. In general, I suppose, and I guess we're talking about West Africa, I suppose, here also.
Yeah, West Africa.
In general, what you see as a West African, even that title is kind of weird, right? What's a West African, right?
Right.
It's like saying I'm a North American. Like, what does that mean?
And
go ahead.
No, I was about to say, like, the reason why it's actually very prevalent in Africa when you say you're West Africans, because West Africans are very assertive. Compared to East Africans, East Africans are more reserved. Oh yeah, if you live, let's say you live 2 years in Nigeria and you live 2 years in Kenya or Tanzania, you will feel the difference between how people behave. West Africans are very assertive. Very.
Okay. I'm also thinking about the lineage in American slavery. I'm thinking about cultural lineage from West. There's a huge, long, this, I'm sure, but huge, long debate about how much of American slave and Black culture is derived from West African culture. But so,
I'm sure a lot of it actually.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. But first, let's do this though. So what you see is cultural collectivism, but spiritual individualism. Okay, and now you like that. Is that right? You seem to like that. The spiritual individualism. Yeah, you like that, right?
No, I'm the opposite. I like cultural individualism and spiritual collectivism.
Okay.
This is the framework of the U.S. society.
Okay.
It's like
yes. Okay, now you're not. I was about to catch you in a contradiction, but you did not make a contradiction. So you did not. I just misheard you. Classical liberalism, right? Is that? Is it not? It is.
Yes.
It is spiritually collectivist, I think, because if you read John Locke, he's always talking about creating value, but for the greater good, for the community, for the nation.
Absolutely. Adam Smith, same thing.
Adam Smith, that's right.
When we both pursue our self-interest, we both benefit.
Right.
That's what he said. But socialists do the opposite, and that's how African culture is technically. It is a socialistic it is a socialistic culture.
Hmm.
Oh, culturally, oh, we have to help each other, and if you don't, you're tagged as the bad guy, the guy who's selfish, etc.
Hmm.
But people are using the equality, the sharing thing as a weapon to serve the personal goals.
Yep. And by the way, that to me comports with a lot of what we call Black working class culture in the United States. By the way, I see that too very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
The spiritual individualism. But here's what I want to ask you then. Now that you're not being contradictory, why do you think, what is it about collectivism that you like culturally? Why do you want, or no, sorry, individually? Why do you want, why is that
The culture
good?
of the individualism.
Yeah.
Yes, but well, because it was said, I can't remember which passage in the Bible, but it was always said, help yourself in order for heaven to help you. And in order to help others, you need to be in a position to help them. If I'm asking you that, give me 100, not 100K, like 1K.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you want to, you cannot give it to me, even if you don't have the money yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to get that money? You have to work. That's what it is. So it's important for people to focus on the self-interest first in order to help others. Because the human genius resides in his uniqueness and individuality. You are who you are because you excel at something very particular. That's the beauty of human beings. And if you try to take that away from them by compelling them to do something they don't want or not good at, they're not going to do well. That's why if you think about it, socialistic countries tend to fail because you prevent the individual genius to flourish.
No, I understand your critique of collectivism. I'm asking why you want to retain collectivism in a culture. What is it about collectivism that's valuable to you?
Well, I mean, as you said, we are all human beings who live in a society. Human beings are social animals. You can't do everything just by yourself. It's impossible. There are always people who help you along the way. So it is important to never forget those who have been with you when you had nothing.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll sit with that. I'll think about that. But it is certainly consistent, very much consistent with classical liberalism.
Yep.
My reading of Locke and Smith is exactly consistent with that. Yeah. You probably sometimes search for things online that you don't want others to know about. Now that's a problem if you think incognito mode will do the trick. Let me tell you something. Incognito mode does not hide your activity. It doesn't matter what mode you use or how many times you clear your browsing history. Your internet service provider can still see every single website you've ever visited. That's why, even when I'm at home, I never go online without using ExpressVPN. It doesn't matter who your internet service provider is, ISPs in the US can legally sell your information to ad companies. ExpressVPN is an app that reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your ISP can't see the sites you visit. ExpressVPN also keeps all of your information secure by encrypting 100% of your data with the most powerful encryption available. Most of the time, I don't even realize ExpressVPN is on. It runs seamlessly in the background and is so easy to use. All you have to do is tap one button and you're protected. ExpressVPN is available on all your devices, phones, computers, even your smart TV. So there's no excuse for not using it. Protect your online activity today with the VPN rated #1 by CNET. Visit my exclusive link, expressvpn.com/unregistered, and you can get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/unregistered. Again, expressvpn.com/unregistered to learn more. Now, so you said you had a turn of mind. Were you a left winger until you were in the States? Okay, never, because your mom.
No, never. I mean, no, I was never a left winger, but I must admit that I had some sympathies for some left-wing policies. And that was because back then I was not into economics. One example was universal healthcare. You know, the argument is based on emotion. You know, hey, give everyone access to healthcare. It's not fair. Why people on the street they can't afford healthcare? You know, the typical. So I used to have some sympathies to that. So when it comes to Obamacare, back then I was not opposed at all to it because I didn't understand the the background of Obamacare. And on top of that, you know, a black man in America in power, it feels good to see your fellow black guy president. So there's always that affinity within black people to see your fellow man in an advanced position. So I had some sympathies personally for Obama, not for the Democratic Party, but for Obama. So I was sympathetic to some of his policies. But then when I started learning about economics, reading Hayek, reading Mises, reading the guys, you know, the real dudes, I was like, okay, now it makes sense. But then, but it was especially when I read The Wealth of Nations that was groundbreaking. It was personally groundbreaking for me because Adam Smith is perhaps the greatest psychologist ever. He understood human sentiments to a deeper level. And he did that in the 18th century where people did not even think that deep yet. And the guy did and tried to understand why people behave the way they do. He did a serious analysis of behavior and ethics. And he understood that ethics strongly matters. I mean, it matters a lot in economics. And I'm sure we may get into my opposition to some of the Austrians when it comes to some methodology and stuff. But because when it comes to economics, I'm not really, I understand the role of ethics, but I don't think it's necessarily the foundation of everything, specifically when it comes to economic analysis. But we'll get into that later on. But when Adam Smith wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiment, that was groundbreaking to me. And then he wrote The Wealth of Nations. When you see these two contradictory books, but deep down, he explained that human beings, at the end of the day, do things because they want to be loved, they want to be admired, they want to feel appreciated. They want to feel appreciated one way or another. So even when they pursue the self-interest, they're doing so not just to satisfy themselves, but to also satisfy the surroundings.
Right. It's social. It's social.
It's amazing. It's amazing
social.
reading.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's amazing reading this. So I was like, wow. I was like, Adam Smith, you are truly the father of modern economics, man.
So Smith is the man for you, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Adam Smith, yeah, he changed my completely. He changed my views. Like he's the one who made me who finalized my embracement of classical liberalism. Absolutely.
So I want to finish talking about West Africa, and then we're going to talk about the United States. You've written many books on both subjects. So how many classical liberals are there in Africa?
Oh, I can't tell you, but I don't think there are enough. I mean, it's an idea that is starting to grow now. Like there are many libertarian factions that are being created, but it is something that is still fought because, for instance, when you take libertarian ideas on the social sphere, I don't know how that could be implemented in African culture. African culture is very conservative. When you say, "Oh yeah, legalize marijuana or legalize every drug," Africans are no.
Right.
We like the economic part, but the legalize prostitution, no. This is us. Even that's why personally I don't like to be labeled as a libertarian. That's why I like to be labeled more as a classical liberal than a libertarian, because the social part, I am conservative when it comes to that. Like, I'm not in favor of legalizing every drug. I'm not in favor of legalizing prostitution and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that I don't necessarily agree with libertarians. Economically, absolutely, but socially,
You are
50-50.
you are most definitely not a libertarian, and you are definitely a classical liberal because
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am a classical liberal. That's
yeah,
my my uh, my intellectual identity.
because I don't know about Smith, but I know that John Locke wrote extensively about culture, and he was an absolute conservative on these questions. And
Absolutely.
he, the central argument for Locke to me, is it's called the self-regulating individual. Sometimes we call it, where
Yeah.
within classical liberalism, the idea is that we individually must and should regulate ourselves, not commit crime, not do drugs, not buy sex, so that the state won't do it for us. Right.
Yep. And
So
that's why. Yeah. And that's why Locke and I are the same in our belief to government. That's why we say the role of government to me, and I fundamentally believe in it like as if it was a religion, I would say. The role of government is to protect individual liberty and private property. That's what government is here to do.
mm-hmm.
Anything beyond that, like, oh, the government is here to give you health and all this nonsense. No, it's the government is here to create the conditions for you to flourish in a society where you can provide for your family and for your surroundings.
But you also want government to regulate morality, to regulate behavior, to regulate individual behavior, to stop me from taking drugs.
I believe in law and order. I believe in law and order. I strongly do. And that's where I may contradict myself here. And you'll be happy about that. I don't necessarily think that it is the role of government to regulate morality, because morality fundamentally is it's subjective. I believe morality is based on the experience that you live. If we live in two different countries, we have two different experiences. We cannot have the same morals. But for example, we both know that killing is a crime. Killing is not a good thing. Stealing is not a good thing. Adultery is not a good thing. I mean, these are universal laws. And, but based on the culture, based on the experience of every society, these laws now are regulated to some degree. So that's why I say that I may contradict myself by saying that we need law and order, but I also do not believe that it is the role of government to regulate morality, because morality is inherently subjective.
It's inherent what?
It is inherently subjective.
Okay. Oh, wow. So now you're a postmodernist.
No, I'm not opposed. I see what you're saying by postmodernist. No, I'm not opposed. I'm definitely not a postmodernist, because those guys, they always say that whatever that is going on in the world is a social construct. That's not true. But to me, it's the concept of experience. It's the concept of experience, because why, for instance, your moral values are not the same as those of the Amish?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That you guys are human beings. You both know, for instance, that killing is wrong. It's wrong to do, but you do not have the same moral values, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
Moral values are different based on, I would say it's based on your upbringing, based on what you've experienced in life.
So there is no universal morality, or there is? I'm not sure. You're saying, on one hand, it's subjective and it's based on experience and locality, where you are, but you're seeming to suggest that there's these things that are inborn, these ideas. You don't think that we're born with the idea that murder is bad, do you?
No. So I believe there are universal laws, and the universal laws are based on the 10 Commandments. And I believe that every criminal or criminal justice system of every country is based on these 10 commandments. Even when you look at the US and look at Saudi Arabia, for example, a crime is technically the death penalty. If you commit a crime in Saudi Arabia, you're going to get the death penalty. But now in the US, because we have a federal system, unless the crime you've committed is federal, it depends on the state you live in. If you live in a state like Connecticut, sure, you will not get a death penalty. But you live in Texas, then they will put the needle in you. So, right. So it really depends. But the bottom line is that this is a universal law. If you steal, it's a crime that you committed too. Now, stealing depends on each local laws, like to what degree they're going to punish you. But it is a crime at the end of the day. So these stuff are universal laws. But now, when it comes to your concept, like your moral corpus, for instance, if you're someone who's been screwed over by your friends, people you love, your morality will tend to be more. It will tend to embrace more like skepticism. You'll be skeptical of people. You will not trust them as much. But if you're someone, things have worked for you in life, you never really struggled to get anything, you'll be, I don't want to say naive, but you'll be more generous. You'll be more open. You'll be more, you will easily trust others. You'll be like, oh no, life gave me this, so I have to be this, your moral values. So that's what I mean by morality is subjective. It is based on what we've been through, based on our education. So yeah, that's pretty much
So I agree with all of that. And you know who else does? Michel Foucault. But
yeah, Michel Foucault. Yeah.
You're a postmodernist, Germinal. I'm sorry. I'm going to insist on this. It's a new label you're going to have to accept. So, okay, let's get concrete here. So one thing I've been curious about for a very long time is the evidence, as you said, conservatism, cultural, I guess we would call it in America, cultural conservatism of West Africa. So like, for instance, I think this is true that the priests from West Africa in the Catholic Church are the most right wing on these questions, the most militant against abortion, gay marriage, all that stuff. And there's sort of infamous laws against homosexuality in many West African countries, right? Angola locks them up, right? I mean, it's illegal, isn't it, in Angola? Yeah. So why is that? Why is that region so? Do you have an answer for that? Do you have an analysis of why it's so culturally conservative, that area?
I do. It's because we believe that you have two species. You have a male and a female. If it was the nature of things for two persons of the same sex to reproduce, female will not exist.
Okay.
Or male will not exist. It will be either just male or just female.
Yep.
But the fact that you have a male and a female is for them to reproduce, to continue the evolution of the human species. So when you go by sleeping with someone who has the same sex as you, first of all, you're distributing disease around the community, and you're going against the nature of things. That's how we see it. And I technically say too, this is why one argument I will never accept is when people tell me, oh, I was born gay. I'm like, no, I cannot accept that. Because to me, how can I explain it? So to me, when someone tells me he was born homosexual or queer or whatever, it's like me telling you, okay, I was born Japanese. I was born Japanese, and like you say, oh, you don't believe me? Well, you don't believe me too. It's not because I'm black that I'm not Japanese. You don't know that. But the point is that we were born without any specific. We were born with a set of cultural identities, but we get to choose our future. So someone cannot come and tell me, like, how at 1 or 2 years old you already know that you're gay. You cannot tell me that. Maybe your environment, because you hang out with people, it influence you. That I can understand. But you cannot come and tell me you were born like this just to justify why you're doing this. Because we can make up stuff too. So this is something that I personally do not accept. I think men and women exist to procreate. If it was the nature of things, we will just have male or we will just have female, but we won't have male and female together.
It's quite logical, very logically consistent too. And by the way, your position on homosexuality not being inborn, guess what? Again, that's a very postmodern position. That's actually what postmodernist queer theorists argue. It's exactly what they argue. John D'Amelio is a very famous queer historian in the United States, really great work. And he wrote a very famous article about homosexuality and capitalism. You'll love this, which is, and he says nothing's in, you should read this. Nothing is inborn, and certainly not sexual preferences. It's a choice. And he proves this by looking at history, because there were no apparent homosexual or gay subcultures anywhere until the late 19th century, when the concept of homosexuality was invented. The concept was invented in the late 19th century. And then after that, you suddenly see large groups of men and large groups of women congregating and doing things together and having bars and nightclubs and sleeping together and, having a shared culture. Absolutely. Yeah. And so that was, and a lot of that runs counter to contemporary sort of political correctness, right? We're now taught that, everything, you're born gay or you're born straight, which is actually a very conservative idea. It's a very conservative idea, actually.
The thing with me is that I believe in existentialism.
Oh,
I'm an existentialist. Yeah, I am an empiricist. I believe in knowledge through experience. I believe that when you were born, you were not born with a set of predestined things. You choose to become. You become what you chose to be. So it's a little bit Jean-Paul Sartre ideas, who was a communist, by the way. But no, this is something I strongly believe, because I know that conservatives usually tend to be the opposite. They're more essentialist.
Exactly.
They more believe in a priori knowledge, like you were born, if you were born, like you're already born this way, you were predestined to do this. Personally, I don't. I believe in free will. I believe that human beings are free by nature, because when you were born, you were not destined to anything. So why do people in jail and they're not, and some people are free and walking around?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think someone was born to be in jail.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest, right? It's your actions that somehow led you at least to trial. And then if now you have a jury that is biased against you, well,
Totally.
But the point is that you did something that led you there.
Yeah.
You were not born and then, on this day, you're going to be this, you're going to be that.
Yeah.
Because if my destiny was to be in jail, I would have already been in jail. Because when you look at the data, like, Black people are the one who fill most of the prisons. Black people are the one who have the lowest income per capita in the US. Like, you see what I mean? So
I do.
I'm here, living life, behaving well, respecting the rule of law, making sure I don't have any beef with the police. None of that, because it's a choice I made. So that's why I believe that human beings are, the nature of human beings is existentialist rather than essentialist.
I love it. I love all that. That's great. You just don't know that you're a French postmodernist.
Perhaps.
That's all. You're the wrong kind of French, apparently. I guess. Okay, so finishing on this line here, were you raised a Catholic?
No. In fact, I was raised Christian, Protestant initially.
Oh.
And then my mom became a Catholic.
Okay.
Because she liked how the Catholic Church is organized. And my sister also became a Catholic, but I just didn't care. I was like, it's just too much work to go to catechesis and complete all the coursework and get baptized. I'm like, so I'm like, okay. That's the reason why I'm not, like, I don't consider myself, and I was never baptized, so I'm not a Catholic.
Okay, because I was wondering about this cultural and sexual conservatism in West Africa, and I'm wondering how much of that is native, and how much of that is from the colonizers. Did they,
That's actually a good question. I think I would tell you that it's, if I can put a number to it, I would say it's 99% native. Like, this is something we always,
Okay.
I don't think I don't think religion necessarily. I mean, it may have impact our cultural visions, definitely, but I don't think the impact was substantial on that regard.
Fascinating. Okay. Actually, no, I have one more much more bigger question about West Africa.
Sure.
And this is your book. Let's get into one of your books. So
Okay.
I think it's just 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. You do like 2 books a year, so it's hard to keep up with you. 2020, you published The Economic Development of West Africa in the 21st Century.
Yeah.
This is another sort of puzzle for me. I'm always curious about why is it, and many people are, why is it that Africa is so damn poor still, although it's much less poor than it used to be now. But what's your, and the common answers are slavery took away the heart of the workforce for centuries, and then colonization following that, beginning especially in the late 19th century, which extracted a lot of the resources and people and from the country without from the region, without giving it back to the people there. So what's your analysis? I mean, I know you wrote a book about this, but I want people here to know.
Sure, yeah. So I basically reject the dependent theory that you explained, it's because of colonization, we depend on other countries. In the book, I completely reject it because the reason why is that Africa is still poor because we do not have a discipline to improve our conditions. That's number one. Number two, we lack the rule of law. You cannot have a society that prospers if those at the top cannot hold themselves accountable to the law.
Mm-hmm.
And that is even, I would say, the fundamental problem of most African countries, the rule of law. That's why Africa always have coup d'etat. They have a ton of coups around because people can never transfer power peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
It always has to end up into violence because people do not respect the rule of law. We do not have the discipline to improve our economic conditions. Because let's say that let's say that, let me give you an example. Let's say you move to Ivory Coast, you start a business. But you come with your American mentality, efficiency, we get things done,
Mm-hmm.
and you apply that there. People will see you as the devil. They're like, what this white man is doing to us? Like, we are working 20 hours a day. We don't even have time to enjoy ourselves. Well, what time to enjoy ourselves means go drinking beer. Like, basically, that's what it is. So there's a strong lack of discipline in most African countries. And African leaders do not hold themselves accountable. Like, there is not a serious audit of the country's finances, where all the resources are allocated, how the government spent the budget. It's not. Compared to the US, like in the US, you go before Congress and you got to testify. And if you screw up, there are legal consequences. Mm-hmm. That's why the US is the most powerful country on earth. It didn't fall from the sky, because the American people built a system based on the rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that with Nixon. When Nixon resigned, that told me that the rule of law works in this country. Right. Absolutely. Nixon, like, I remember I watched his documentary. It was August 9th, 1974. He said, I cannot govern you anymore. I have to go.
Yeah.
He left.
Yeah. Now the rule of law in this country is being challenged a bit lately by both sides, I think. But yeah, in general, yes, of course, you're right. That's what marks it from much of the world, not just from West Africa. But so what you're talking about then is a series of choices made by masses of people in various regions, different regions. So in the United States, you are asserting that there were many people made choices over centuries, essentially, choosing the rule of law, choosing discipline, choosing self-regulation, right? Choosing economic activity, choosing economic development instead of, I mean, we chose a lot of beers too, but not quite as many apparently. So, and in West Africa, you are asserting that there have been different choices made by the people who live there. And you're talking about ordinary people as well as the elites. You're talking about just regular people who were born in that area. They've made different choices than people who were born here.
Yeah.
So that's what makes you fundamentally different than, is it called interdependence theory? Or what's the model?
Interdependency, the dependency theory, the interdependence.
Yeah, dependency theory. Yeah. So according to that model, the thing that's missing from Africans is agency. There's no choices being made according to that model, right? It's that the European colonizers came in and determined the fate of the people who lived in Africa. Everything, your life, everyone who was born in that area was determined by the French, by the British, by the Portuguese, by the Belgians.
Let me tell you an anecdote. My mom told me this story. She said there were two groups that visited a factory in China. One group was African and the other was European. The Africans came, took pictures, and they were happy. The Chinese let them take in the pictures. And when the Europeans wanted to take the picture, the Chinese said no. Why is that? It's because the Chinese said, we know that the Africans will not be able to reproduce what we did here. They said they will not be able to reproduce, but the Europeans will.
Okay.
That's why. So the point is to say that, when people say, oh yeah, like the Europeans stole our natural resources,
right?
You don't have the means to even transform them. Because,
right.
And I explained that in the book, like, what is a natural resource? Like water, wood, all these stuff we call natural resources, all these minerals, they are of no use unless you start using it for alternative purposes. Mm-hmm. That's when they become useful. So when you do not have the means to transform these natural resources into alternative uses for human consumption, how rich are you? You're not. If it wasn't for the Europeans who came and extract those things, Africans were just sitting there. Mm-hmm. You don't have the technology. You don't have the technology to extract those things. And technology is what is missing in African culture, in African economics, is we don't focus enough on technology. Today, if you do not focus on the gray matter, which is the brain, mm-hmm. the ability to transform things, you're going to remain poor. Why China, who had the same GDP as most African countries in the 1960s, is today the second power in the world? They made a choice. That's my point. They made a choice. They could have decided to remain poor.
Yeah.
What choice they made? Once Mao died, Deng Xiaoping opened up. He liberalized the economy. Mm-hmm. He gave people the access to private property. And today, China, you cannot rival with them. Let me give you the example of Nigeria. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, he's a strong capitalist. I actually love this guy. And he created the conditions in Nigeria to promote local champions. So today you have people like Aliko Dangote, who is the richest black man on the planet. He's Nigerian. He created a condition that every Nigerian has access to private property. So today it is, and he toughened the conditions for Europeans and multinational companies to come and sell the things in Nigeria. That's what he did. But most African countries don't do that. We don't even have free trade. Europeans are trading with each other. Africans, we don't. The materials we have, like let's say cocoa, for instance, which is the common raw material we use in Ivory Coast. We just sell the raw material to the French or to other European countries. They're the ones who transform it, and they resell it to us at a price that is 3 times higher. Because we didn't have the means to transform them. Now we are working on it, but still. But in Nigeria, that's why Nigeria is today ahead of South Africa, because Obasanjo created the condition for Nigerian entrepreneurs to become the local champions of the region. It's amazing.
Choices.
Choice.
And Nigeria experienced both slavery and colonization. And
everyone did.
Not long ago.
Everyone did.
Yeah, that's right. Not
right?
not long ago at all. And now look where they are.
Yeah,
But certainly you would say that slavery and colonization impoverished Africa, wouldn't you?
it did impact Africa. Yeah, I can never deny that.
Okay.
This is true. It did. But the problem is, for how long are you going to use it as an excuse to justify why you still lagging?
Mm-hmm.
That's where my issue is. And it's the same with African Americans in the
Yeah.
US. I don't even like the term African Americans. Like, I call them Black Americans. I am an African American because I have African and American culture in me. Those, they have only American culture. They don't have African culture. They're just Black.
Right.
So they're Black Americans. And Black Americans, they always use slavery to justify why they're still in this position. I'm like, guys, slavery has happened everywhere. And on top of that, one thing they don't realize is that colonization is even worse than slavery. Let me tell you why. Slavery, they took you and they sent you to a foreign land, completely foreign. You don't know anything. But colonization, the guy comes from God knows where. He comes into your house. He enslaves you, dehumanize you, rape your wife, humiliate you in front of your kids, and say this is his property.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, no, guys, you don't have the monopoly of victimhood. You don't have the monopoly of suffering. Look at South Africa. That's what the Dutch did in South Africa. They literally went there and raped Black South Africans of everything they had. That to me, it's more humiliating than crossing the Atlantic Ocean and they ship you into the South and you got to do manual labor. The same thing that happened here happened in Africa. It's no different. It's just that in Africa, it's local.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, now that's a great segue to another one of your books, which you published this year. Oh, no, sorry. Actually, there's two. There's one. Actually, you've written three really books on Black Americans, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. But you have The Economic Condition of Black America in 2020, and then An Economic Analysis of Racial Inequalities and the Redistribution of Wealth in America, which you published in April of this year. So you make similar argument vis-a-vis Black Americans here. Do you want to, let's see, you want to lay this out? I mean, a lot of it is you're very much influenced by Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do we begin here? I guess I'm interested in a lot of it, but I guess let's start with this. Let's start with the W.E.B. Du Bois Booker Washington so-called debate of the turn of the 20th century, which they never actually directly debated each other, but they sort of indirectly did.
Ideas.
Yeah. So Washington and Du Bois had very different ideas about how to advance African Americans in American society. And Du Bois, or I should say, Washington chose sort of what we might call an economic strategy, and Du Bois chose what has been called a political strategy. And for you, Du Bois is the villain here, one of the main villains in African American history. And but it's funny because he's now considered to be the hero in every African American history, every African American studies department in every university. He's the man. He is the man. He is loved and revered by everyone who studies really American history. And I know this because I'm one of those people. So although I have very mixed, I have very mixed views about Du Bois, and I'm very sympathetic to your analysis of him. So why don't you lay out that debate and tell us why W.E.B. Du Bois is the origin of much that is bad with Black America.
The problem with Du Bois is that he was promoting a strategy that were not in the advantage of Black people in America. Mm-hmm. Let me explain. So the reason why I prefer the Booker T. Washington approach is that when you know that you live in a system that was designed to keep you as a second-class citizen, you need to use a strategy, a legal strategy, that will help you climb the ladder. And he understood that by using economics knows no race. If a white person, even the most racist white person, if he likes your product, is going to buy. Simple as that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. he's going to buy because he is interested in the product, not who made it. So he encouraged African Americans to focus on their skills, to specialize into something that will help them navigate industries around corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said that if you're able to educate yourself, not necessarily in an academic sense, but learning the skills, going to trade school, learning a specific skill that will help you put food on the table, you're good to go. Du Bois, on the other hand, focused more on not doing revolutions, but he was focusing more on telling Black people to not subjugating themselves to this and to fight back. But how will you fight back when you do not have the resources to fight the system that enslaved you in the first place? That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem with Du Bois. Like, he made a great analysis of, I don't dispute his analysis. His analysis was great in terms of understanding the sociological problem that Black people were facing in American society. But how do you now try to circumvent that problem? Mm-hmm. And it's the attempt to circumvent that problem that was not good, in my opinion, because the solutions that he offered were not beneficial for Black people. It did not tell Black people to, for instance, focus on learning skills that would be useful. Because when you know a skill, and I'm talking by experience, when you know a skill, it's like having a weapon on you. Like, you can defend yourself on anything. Mm-hmm. And he did not advance that. He was trying to make Black people focus more on the political process by making them believe that the political process will be their salvation. But the political process never, ever solves sociological and economic problems. It doesn't. What if you focus on the economics, you're able to uplift your community. There's a reason why most Asians never mingle in American politics, because they focus on education, they focus on skills, and that's why the Asians are the richest community in America.
Right.
Same for Indians from India. Mm-hmm. But African Americans are always the one, and I understand why, to some extent, why they always industry revolting and stuff like that. It's true, there's some injustice against them. I cannot deny that. But it's that belief of the political process as the means to alleviate the problem that's where the fallacy is. It is a fallacy because the political process will never alleviate your problem, specifically your economic and sociological problems. But if you focus on economics, if you focus on building skills and using those skills to create a framework for the community that will help your fellow men also benefiting from that framework, then you're uplifting the community as a whole. And that's what Booker T. Washington tried to do. He was saying, guys, listen, I know what I'm telling you is not cool, but you do not have the resources to fight against these guys yet. So instead of trying to fight them back, use your brain, think, focus on the skill that will help you elevate yourself so that you can live in a world with those people and you can still put food on the table and provide for your family.
Okay, so this is fascinating. The more polite critics of Booker T. Washington will say he's an accommodationist, that his strategy was intended to accommodate white people, to serve white people, and by serving white people, by giving them these skills, these services, these products, whatever it is, white people will then accept Black people into the body politic. The less charitable critics of Booker T. Washington call him an Uncle Tom.
Yeah, Coon and
Uncle Tom. Yeah. That he was the white man's black man. He was here to serve white people primarily. Okay. Now, the thing is, Germinal, your argument, I think, is that W.E.B. Du Bois was, in a sense, the origin, or his ideas were the origin of Black victimhood.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, why is it that the political strategy that Du Bois laid out resulted in, right, very common appeal to Black victimhood?
Because the ideas of Du Bois omit responsibility, because by embracing his ideas, you can always justify why you're lagging. It's not your fault. He's the right man. He's the guy who deprived me of everything. That's why I don't like Du Bois, because and it's not just Du Bois, is the Rousseauan. Let's get a little philosophical.
There we go.
It's the idea, it's the Rousseauan approach to human nature that bothers me, because Rousseau was a deterministic man. He believed that whatever happens to you, it's not your fault. Well, if it's not your fault, whose fault is it?
Yep.
For how long are you going to keep pointing the fingers at others?
Yep.
When are you going to man up and take responsibilities for yourself? Say, hey, dude, I screwed up here. When are you going to own your mistakes? And that's what it is. And that's what it is in this country. And the reason why it's becoming worse now is because minorities, specifically Black people, understood that white people have a guilt. And this guilt, if there's one thing that white people in America are extremely afraid of, is to be called racist.
Yep.
They are afraid of that. And Black people know that. So when you try to make them do something and they don't, you're racist. Immediately, they go, no. They understood that. They know. And that's why it's getting worse. And that's why people like, what's this guy named? That Black professor, Kendi, Ibram X. Kendi.
Kendi. Ibram Kendi.
These people, and that's why they're now prominent. It's because they understand that white people have that guilt, especially in America. They have the guilt of, I feel bad for what my ancestors did to you. I'm not a racist. I'm not this. I'm like, no. And the worst part here is, and most of those people who are doing that are actually the white liberals. And that's why I agree with Malcolm X. He said the white liberal is the most dangerous man on the planet. The white liberal who will wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt is the same guy who will stand by his window, take his phone and say, 911, there are like 2 Black men walking by my lawn. That's how it is. And that victimhood, and what people don't understand is that the victimhood mentality of Du Bois gave even more grounds for white folks to minimize Black folks, because they're saying you always need a handout. It's not your fault. You're a little guy. Can't do anything.
Yep.
You know, whereas that's why Booker T. Washington said, focus on your skills. Education is the only thing that no one can take it away from you. It's the only thing. And even though, like, Thurgood Marshall was a liberal, I respect him and love the guy because he understood this. He said, for Black people to be equal to white folks in this country, they need to understand the law. He focused on the law. He was the most pragmatic Black folks to advance civil rights compared to Martin Luther King, who was giving great speeches. But look at what Thurgood Marshall did. He went before the Supreme Court in 1952, argued before those white judges. He used reason, logic, empirical evidence to explain why separate by equal no longer stands. Why those white, all of those judges were racist. I mean, it was 1952. You cannot expect someone in 1952 to be woke. Sorry, but so those guys were there, but they didn't say anything because the logic was there. The argument was there. He used his skills, he used his legal skills to make those white judges comply. And what happened? Brown v. Board of Education became a legal precedent. That was a big victory for the Black community.
But wait a minute. Brown v. Board of Education, Thurgood Marshall, that was political action. That was Du Boisian, wasn't it?
It was. But what Thurgood Marshall did, though, and this is why I'm trying to now connect the Booker T. Washington approach, is that he used his legal skills. instead of marching, doing all the political activities. Sure, it was political to some extent, don't get me wrong, but he used his skills. Thurgood Marshall went to school. He understood that in order to fight the system in which we were being discriminated, understand the law. And it's even when people argue why white folks never apologized to black folks for slavery, because slavery was legal.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to apologize for something that was legal.
Mm-hmm.
And I always told my mom, I said, the United States of America is a very data-driven country. Everything you do in this country is recorded, is documented. And I always told my mom this. I said, if you want to fight white people, fight them on those grounds. Use your mind, use the brain, use the law, use the data to back your argument. I can give you a very simple anecdote. Sometimes like you see white folks committing crimes and then they claim insanity. Mm-hmm. And then people say, oh, the judge was biased. He's because he's a white man, so he didn't send him to jail. No, because the guy was seeing a psychologist, he was seeing a psychiatrist, he had legal document to back his claim. But black people have mental issues too. But why they go to jail instead of going to a mental facility? Because we don't believe in those things. Black people don't go to the psychologist. Black people don't go to the psychiatrist. If you don't have legal documents to present to the judge, you can't win. And this is one thing I try to make black people understand, is that you need to understand that in this country, it's a very data-driven country. Everything is documented. Use documents to protect yourself. Use documents to fight the system. You live in a system where you need to understand these instruments, how to use those instruments. If you know how to use those instruments well, you're going to beat the system. Simple as that.
Okay. Yeah. It's a cultural question, ultimately, for you. All these things are cultural questions. It's about people choosing to live and think in different ways. Yeah. And according to you, and I've heard you've done some YouTube videos in which you're basically making this argument. According to you, anyone can learn pretty much anything.
Absolutely.
Right. And therefore they can do pretty much anything in the world. And certainly groups of human beings like African Americans, the tens of millions of them, right? They can certainly, and they've proven it already anyway, but they can certainly do what Irish Americans have done, what Italian Americans have done, what West African immigrants have done.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now let me get you in trouble before you leave. Okay. I want to get you in a lodge. Although your color helps with this. I couldn't say these things, but I want you to talk about African American culture. So, and how you see it. Now, West African and West Indian immigrants to the United States are known for having pretty jaundiced view of Black American culture. Not big fans, notoriously sort of condescending about them. And often, my West Indian friends talk about Black Americans the way the Ku Klux Klan talks about Black Americans. And that's not an exaggeration. I'm talking about really, really racist sounding stuff.
Yeah.
So is that you? Do you look down on your Black American brothers and sisters?
When I came in the US, initially, yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. But as I started to understand a little bit their history, I started to have more compassion. But I still believe that, and that's where it bothers me about them, is that they keep using history to justify why they keep lagging today.
Right.
And the reason, and what also bothers me is that they don't understand that before being Black, before being an American, before being anything else, you are a human being.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I believe that no matter what your race, your religion, your gender is, we're human beings. You can achieve anything you want in life if you put your mind to it. To me, like it blows my mind when I see the way Chinese have become today.
Yeah.
They're no God. They don't come from Mars. Like, what is that mentality of, no, this is just for white people? No, it's not just for white people. Nothing is just for white people.
Right.
White people are dirt poor. in the 1500s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people tend to think that, oh, what is white is necessarily wealth, you know, and what is black is poverty and crime, because that's how racism has been structured. That's how it has
Right.
been created, at least in the US. But white people have been poor too. Chinese have been poor too.
Mm.
Everyone have been poor. But why white people are rich today? Because they understood the need of the scientific method, the need of logic, the need of economic productivity, and that's why they are where they are today. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the exact same method that Chinese people did.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they are where they are today.
Mm-hmm.
And always say, I think the main problem with black people in general, and this one I say in general because it's not just black Americans, but even Africans, we're just too distracted. We're too distracted. We focus on things that do not matter. We love entertainment very much so. No, we know we really, it vexes me. It bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, understand why back then entertainment was perhaps the only industry where black people could excel, where, you know, they had like a very restricted access to education and stuff like that. I understand. But today, with the internet,
Mm-hmm.
with this age of information, you can literally learn anything. Dad, I'm telling you, I learned statistics by taking YouTube tutorials.
Wow.
I did not take a single class of statistics in my life. No way.
Wow.
I never took a single class of economics in my life. Supply demand, I didn't know what was that. I swear to God, I didn't know any of that.
Wow.
I learned everything on my own. I learned how to run regressions on my own. I did everything because I was like, I live in a time today where I can do everything without even having to move from my office. And you have people still complaining that they're being oppressed. What are you oppressed about? When Africans come in this country, we're not coming to play. We're coming to take your job because you're screwing around. It's true. When I came here, one thing my dad said, don't hang out with black Americans.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. He said if you hang out with those people, you will increase your chance to get arrested by the police and go to jail. He said you're coming in the country dominated by white people. The system, everything you see is their system. If you want to succeed in that system, learn how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Learn the laws of the country you live in. Understand why they think the way they do. If you apply those things, you will never ever struggle in the United States. I will never forget that.
Mm-hmm.
He was a communist, but he was smart.
I was gonna say an African communist saying that about black people. Come on, man. That's fantastic.
He's smart. Like, no, he understood and applied his advice ever since 2010. Oh yeah, I've been doing that, and in 11 years, I mean, I have my struggles too, but these are part of the process to succeed in life. You know, it's not like struggles that you provoked on your own and now you're in this mess and you can't leave. No, it's part of the process. The struggle that is part of the process to become successful.
Yeah. Is there anything about Black American culture that you like?
Yes. Black people are very resilient. Yeah, Black people are extremely resilient. And our resilience comes from the fact that we struggle so much. You know, Black people suffered a lot throughout history. So we're used to that. We're used to endure the pain. So we have that resilience in us. So now I think it would be good if we use that resilience and we focus in intellectual activities, scientific activities, anything that can help the community improve its condition. Because entertainment is don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing, but I think when you are a society that is economically underdeveloped, you don't focus on entertainment. If it was the case, Brazil would have been the first power in the world just by using soccer.
Right.
But they're not.
Right.
What developed a society is the scientific method. It is not entertainment. And that's what Europeans, North Americans, and Asians understood, and Indians understood too, the scientific method. And it really saddened me to see that at the African American Museum, they say like the scientific method is a white thing. Yeah, like using logic is a thing for white people. I'm like, you guys are acting like you have no brain. Like, come on. It baffles me, man. It's really irritating. I'm like, this is why they will never respect you. If you want the government to see you as his equal, use his own methods and understand how it proceeds. If you do that, you're going to be successful. That's what Nelson Mandela did too. Another communist that I don't really like, but I respect. That's what he did. Like, he understood the law of South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very well. That's why he became very successful, and everyone admired him.
Exactly.
He always said, like, understand how your enemy is thinking and proceeding. I mean, white people are not my enemies, don't get me wrong. My wife is Indian, so you guys are not. But the point is
it's okay. It's okay. I'm not white anyway. It's fine.
But the point is to say that when you live in a society or in a system that was not made for you initially, learn the parameters of that system to take advantage of it.
Sure.
It's a matter of choice.
Sure.
That's really what it comes down to.
Okay. Great. Speaking of thriving within the system, what are your plans for the future? We talked before we started recording, but I'd love for the audience to hear. Yes, Germinal is a very ambitious guy, as we all know now. Very ambitious. So what do you want to do going forward?
So yeah, I mean, my two goals. One is to win the Nobel Prize, but this is a long shot. And the second is to become a hedge fund manager. This is more realistic. Yeah. I mean, as I told you before we start the show, that I mean, the Nobel Prize, I have to get into academia, and I really don't see myself doing a PhD, at least not now. Like, if I'm planning on having a kid and stuff like that, I can't go to a PhD. It doesn't make sense to me, because it will be like 5 to 7 years without a salary. While right now what I'm making is pretty much good. Living that, it doesn't make sense. And plus, there's even no guarantee that I will see win the Nobel Prize just because I did this. But at least a hedge fund that I know I can create it, or even any type of investment fund, because I trade, I buy stocks, bonds, commodities. I develop some strategies for my trading positions. So I know this is something I can do. All I have to start, like, if I don't, even for instance, if I don't have the capital to even start a hedge fund, because you cannot need much more than just a couple thousand to start a hedge fund, because the legal structure is more complicated. But you can start as a proprietary trading firm. A proprietary trading firm is technically you trading, but instead of you trading as an individual, you trade as an entity. And because you're a business, so you get, like tax breaks and all of that, but you're just trading your own money for market gains.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good path to build a track record before turning into a hedge fund and start taking clients' money and managing their money and stuff like that. But I think this is more realistic, and this is one thing I want to do. And I get to use econometrics to make money. That's the goal.
But your hedge fund you were gonna do something with the money from the hedge fund. I thought the hedge fund was gonna serve some community.
Absolutely. Okay. And the purpose of creating the hedge fund is to use that money to help low-income communities, specifically the Black community. Because the Black community needs facilities. One thing I want to do is to create schools, because Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful tool the society needs to prosper. I strongly believe in it. So I want to be able to use my money, private means, private initiative, classical liberal, you use the power of the market, to empower others, to give people the chance to have an education, to give people the chance to, to have access to healthcare if they want, and stuff like that. So that's why I see money to me, money is just a tool. It's a tool to have access to resources, and then you can use those resources to improve people's lives.
You sound like a collectivist.
I know. I am a collectivist.
You communist? You didn't fall too far from the tree, did you?
Right. Not too far.
You're a capitalist serving communist ends. No, this sort of proves your earlier point about classical liberalism being collectivist at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we are spiritually collectivists. We believe in, the power of the individual to serve the community.
Exactly.
That's what it's about.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
What's your next book on?
So this one is going to be quite technical. It's called A Statistical Inquiry into the Cost of Healthcare in America.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. So I am analyzing all the factors that contribute to the reasons why healthcare is more expensive in the US than anywhere else. So yeah, I've been fascinated about healthcare actually. It's my wife is a nurse.
Oh.
And my sister has always been into biology. I even like biology too. One thing I'm very interested in biology is to analyze biological data into biometrics. I've been fascinated about that. Yeah. So anything that deals with healthcare, it's something that I have a keen interest in.
I can't wait for this book. This is great. I mean, this is what we need, because I've had some theories about why healthcare is so expensive in this country, and I've got some ideas, but I've never seen it laid out systematically in a book or even in a long article. This is really needed. This is great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty big book. I'm just on chapter 2. Okay. There'll be like a bunch of regressions, and stuff like that. But it's because I have to test my theories. I want the reader to understand, like, hey, I test my hypothesis. This is the result. Of course, like the result, because I'm using observational data, so I cannot conduct experiments, but at least I can conduct correlational analysis. Mm-hmm. Say, hey, here's a correlation between X and Y. So that could explain maybe why we have these results we have today. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and so that's what I'm working on. It's about healthcare.
Great. Love it. Number 21, book 21.
Yeah, book 21. Yeah, this one's going to take a while. It's going to take.
You're almost 32. You gotta step up your production rate. Come on,
right?
Right. Germinal, this has been fantastic. You are a fascinating guy with a lot of fascinating ideas, and your life is fascinating. And I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Dad. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely, looking forward.
All right, man. Thank you. This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. To join the new Renegade University, go to renegadeuniversity.com. To join the new Unregistered Underground, the supporting listeners group for the podcast, go to unregisteredunderground.com. Thanks for listening.